I thought AI was all about automation, data, and making businesses more efficient. But when I spoke to Eric, one of the most knowledgeable and inspiring figures in enterprise storage and in wider infrastructure, and someone who's shaped my own understanding of this space for over 15 years. His presentations have always been unforgettable, and they still are now. He continues to wow crowds and inspire people on their journey within enterprise. So when he joked about living to 120, I had to ask, can AI actually help us live longer? And more importantly, is that something we even want? We also dive into something huge, the Lenovo acquisition of Infinidat, and what it means for the future of enterprise storage. Eric brings this kind of depth, insight, and knowledge that you rarely get in tech these days. This is one of those conversations you're going to need to hear. If you know Eric or have worked with Eric, he would love to see your comments and feedback in the comments below. I look forward to all feedback on the video. Please enjoy Eric Herzog, one of the greatest.
Baseline.
AI needs to be done right, and then it will be more utopian. If it's done wrong, it will be dystopian. And right now, I'd say it's on the fence because you see things in the paper all the time.
The baseline is designed to create an emotional response.
I've seen things you won't believe.
More human than human.
Make you question everything.
I've been doing storage, primarily enterprise, but also channel and even OEM since 1985, excuse me. So, we're coming into 40 years of me doing storage. And I've been with startups, and I've been with big giant companies. So I was at IBM twice. I was at EMC before it was acquired by Dell. And I was at Maxtor, the hard drive company, twice. And the second time before it was acquired by Seagate, and then at Seagate for a little bit. So my background spans everything in the storage space, from systems, pure software, storage software only. Several of my startups didn't sell any hardware componentry at all. It was just purely a software sell. Component technology such as hard drives, storage chips that went primarily to the big OEMs selling to IBM Storage, EMC, HPE Storage Division. So he's been a global role. And then when you look at it from the startup perspective, I've had much more experience than just in marketing. So in all of them, I ran product management. 4 times I was the chief revenue officer while I was the CMO. 3 times I was the VP of HR, which, by the way, is a thankless position. And people don't realize all the stuff you have to do, from making sure they have their insurance to payroll to all the little stuff. I have run support and service 4 times. I've run manufacturing and supply chain 3 times. And I was even the CFO once, where I was also the CMO, where we raised $17 million while I was the CFO. So my background on the startup side is very, very broad. And then on the enterprise side, it's basically product marketing, product management, all the other marketing functions, whether it be channel, whether it be the website, social media, and everything in between. So I'm sort of like a hybrid. When IBM hired me the second time, I said, well, why'd you hire me? They said, A, you came from EMC, who's the biggest storage company in the world with a $10.5 billion P&L there, but also you've done all the small company stuff, and we want to try to do something different at IBM Storage and not just be the old stodgy IBM. And we were moderately successful at that. There are a lot of things that IBM Storage did, like wearing Hawaiian shirts and giving away trips to Hawaii, that IBM never would do until I got there. So, trying to sizzle things up a little bit. Now, you always have to have the meat. It's like that old commercial from Wendy's here in the US, where's the beef? And there's some companies that sizzle up stuff that really is empty, and that does you no good. So the idea is you need to have the right technology and products and solutions underneath, and then you need to sizzle it up. And you need to make sure, particularly in the storage side, that you're not just talking about technical nerd value. Sure, when you're talking to a storage admin, the guy's got 3 degrees, been doing storage for 40 years like me. He wants to talk about how you do the offset, or how you do the cache layer, or how you do this, that, or the other thing, or even get down into hard drive metrics like the TPI and BPI and all that kind of stuff that almost nobody talks about. That's great. But you know what? Storage can be very expensive, particularly in the high-end enterprise. I mean, for example, at Infinidat, you know, our sell price is close to $1 million, and it can be smaller. You know, so these high-end storage solutions, whether it's us or our competitors, they're not low cost. So you've got to have a business proposition around it. Are you saving on CapEx and OpEx long term? What are you doing to give me greener IT? By the way, greener IT is not expensive. A lot of people think it is, and it's not. Greener IT actually has an economic advantage as well as an environmental advantage. What are you doing to make my application workloads better? I've been doing this for a long time, Ian. I don't know if I've hit 1,000 CIOs yet, but I'm sure I'm well over 500. I've never met one that used to be a storage admin, not even once. So they kind of tolerate storage. In fact, I would argue they hate it, but they know they have to have it because that's where their enterprise data goes. You've got to show, here's the value from a technical perspective. And you need to learn, and this is something I've learned a long time, you need to sell up and down the food chain, from the lowest level, most technical asset, up to the top asset. And when the economy is bad, it's getting a little better now, depending on the country. And it's doing well in the States. It's not doing well everywhere else. Some countries good, some countries bad. But the CFO is going to want to know, why the heck should we not delay this for a year? The economy is bad. Why is this value? You've got to make sure that you're appealing to a wide range of audiences and tailor your message to your audience. You don't talk, you know, my eldest child is 5, and I can tell you when he was 5 years old, I spoke to him differently than I do now, and differently when he was 10 and 15, and even when he got out of college, because people change and you have to adapt that message to their frame of reference, and their frame of reference changes as people age, or it changes in their level. If someone started as storage admin and is now the VP of infrastructure, okay, his frame of reference or her frame of reference will be somewhat the same, but it will change because they're not just the storage admin anymore.
I listen to your energy and passion for this subject now, and it's no diminished, if not, it's greater than it was 15 years ago. I was watching Larry Ellison stand up at the inauguration. The fella's 80 years old. He's talking with a contemporary understanding and belief in his products. I thought, this guy's been around for my entire career. My entire IT career that spanned over 25 years. Ellison, yourself, you've been these foundational identities and inspiring people. How have you kept going for so long and still be able to speak about it in such a authentic, passionate way?
So a couple things. One, I'm one of those people that only sleeps 5 to 6 hours a night. Even if I've been out drinking beers with my college fraternity brothers, I still only sleep 5 or 6 hours a night. Doesn't matter. So my mother used to joke that I didn't have a pituitary gland. I am somewhat short. I'm only 5'9" in U.S. parlance, although you used to use that in the U.K.
I still do that.
So, but she used to joke that I don't have a pituitary gland. I have a caffeine gland. So I'm just, I just believe in being active and doing things. I'm almost 70 years old. I'm not as old as Larry Ellison, but I'm almost 70. I also think that, since I'm a native California, I could say this, storage is cool and bitchin', and people don't give it credit, okay? And think about it. The bulk of the world's data that isn't in your head is sitting on storage. So if all that storage was lousy, if all that storage messed up, then all that data for your enterprise, if you're a small business owner, it's sitting on storage in a computer or storage connected to it at the small business. At the global enterprises, you could have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of petabytes. And there are customers, as you know, when we used to work at IBM, which I can't divulge, but we had probably 25 customers back then with over 2 exabytes in production, right? So storage doesn't get the credit that it deserves, and I think it's cool. I think it's bitchin'. Excuse my French. It's sexy. It is the foundational element on the IT side. It doesn't mean you don't need compute. Of course you do. You need networking. Obviously, you need laptops and desktops. We're talking, here you need the printers. But I'm telling you, if storage goes wrong, your company can go wrong. That's why not only does malware and ransomware attack your servers and the apps, but they go after your storage because they know the bulk of your data is sitting on storage. So if they want to destroy it, if it's a malware attack, or if they want to mess up your company and hold you for ransom, and by the way, just so you know, cyber attacks will cost companies this year, estimated by security analyst firms, not people in storage or generic IT, but people focused on security, $10.5 trillion US globally. And that's not just paying the ransom, that's every stitch you do to try to fight it, all the consultants you hire, all the cyber experts you need to employ, right? Everything you need to do around cyber is 10.5 trillion US dollars. That's a big bill. And guess what? They're going after storage all the time. So to me, storage is cool and bitchin'. People don't give it credit it's deserved. And if they really think about where their data is, especially in medium and large enterprises, 90% or more of their data is sitting on those damn arrays. So if they don't take care of them, they don't buy the right ones, if they don't make them cyber resilient, if they don't protect them from disaster, I mean, I'm a native California, we really do have earthquakes. Okay, in the UK, I'm not sure what you got, but data centers do burn down. And in Asia, there's hurricanes, there's tornadoes, there's all kinds of natural disasters. The most common form of data loss, other than you and me deleting a PowerPoint, is still fire. So you have to have a disaster plan. You have to have a cybersecurity plan. You have to make sure that your storage is not overly expensive, but if you go on the cheap, as you would say, if the data gets lost and you use your accounts payable, accounts receivable, that's a big deal. If you think about it.
How do you... The whole transition we saw to, the public cloud providers, AWS, Azure, somewhat commoditized storage is a thing. Obviously, back in our day, you had the storage, network, compute as the three foundations of application infrastructure. And, we went through virtualization to containerization, then floating on, rented infrastructure from the big cloud providers. Like, how do you see that? How do you see that going? Are we seeing repatriation of cloud workloads back onto on-premises? AI is bringing this whole data control, copyright. Seeing the emergence, obviously huge emergence of NVIDIA as this GPU processing layer. I can see a lot of innovation. Obviously, the processing layer, because of AI, is the thing that's just going crazy. Is it still just a cloud rental model, or are we moving to an era where customers are taking control back? And I'm not leading you there. I'm genuinely interested to...
So if you go back and think about the early days of the cloud, everyone wanted to jump to the cloud. They just wanted to jump. The cloud is everything. Okay. And now I think there has been a realization that the world is really a hybrid multi-cloud world. You probably shouldn't have one cloud vendor, just like you usually don't have only one storage vendor or one networking vendor. You just don't do that. So for the mid and high-end enterprise accounts, what I'll call the global Fortune 2000, similar government agencies that are, of that kind of large, entity, the EU, think about the US Internal Revenue Service and all the data they get. I mean, these guys have petabytes and petabytes and petabytes and petabytes and petabytes of data. So I think there's been a realization that the cloud is good for certain workloads. One, backup, great place for backup. Now, if your backup is performance sensitive, and there are some backups that are, you probably want on-prem. Disaster recovery. Yes, you can have a second data center. So if there's an earthquake in California, you've got a data center in London. Or if there's a hurricane in London, you've got a data center in Munich. Okay, that's true. But you also could do it with a cloud vendor. Clearly, DevOps. That is what got the whole world started. And there's nothing wrong with doing DevOps. Now, I would argue if you're going to do it smart, there are several storage vendors, including us, that have a full version of their operating system that runs in Amazon or Azure or other cloud vendors. So when you're doing the DevOps, you are doing it on the exact storage you're going to use, right? Because storage is really about the software. And maybe burst. But basically, the smart thing to do is profile your applications, workloads, and use cases, and look at performance metrics, security metrics, and you will see that there are certain elements, and actually a fair amount, because there are lots of articles in the IT press with quotes from all kinds of global Fortune 2000, how they're repatriating part of their data. I think what people didn't realize is, let's take the basic. When you order cloud storage, you get 3 nines of availability. That's the default. Okay, 3 nines, that's kind of like what your home is. Okay, for high-end enterprise, they want 6, 7. So when you're talking to Mr. Cloud Provider, I want 4 nines. Oh, we have to charge a little fat. 5 nines, we got to charge that. 6 nines, you got to charge for it. 7 nines, we can't deliver that. 100% availability, and we offer it at Infinidat, but so do a couple of our competitors. We can't do that either. Then you have the same issue with performance. That's storage sensitive. I want 50 mics of latency because that's my absolute, can't do that. Then you have the traversing of the data both in and out, ingress and egress. And what people failed to realize initially was you get charged for it. So for highly transactional workloads, if you're constantly going in and out, you are paying a bundle. So right when you and I were at IBM, one of my buddies was the CIO of a major university in New York. I'd met him when I was at EMC. So he gets there, and the president, who's not a technical guy, and this included several campuses, big campuses, as well as several practicing hospitals, not just medical schools, but literally where you or I would go if we had to have our appendix removed, right? So not just teaching hospitals, but taking care of people and teaching. So the president tells him when he gets in, he's a CIO, you really need to be all cloud. So he calls me up, I go in, I meet him in New York, and he tells me this story. He knew that was the wrong thing to do. He didn't say anything to the president. It's an academic. So what academics do? Evidence. So what he did was he borrowed a finance guru from the CFO's team and put that guy on doing a bunch of research. How much does it cost? What does 4 nines cost? What does 5 nines cost? From all the major cloud vendors of the time, the big ones, not the small ones, but the big ones. What does all that cost? Okay, now when we look at our workload transaction rates, every time we're going in and out, how much do they charge us? And what he found out, and what he showed the president of the university, about 60% of the applications belonged on-prem. And cloud was not less expensive. Cloud was way more expensive for a lot of workloads. Now, disaster recovery, no problem. Backup, at least the bulk of backup, there were some certain backups like in healthcare, like if there was an issue, they need to pull that data back immediately. So you couldn't put it in the cloud. But a lot of other things, accounts payable, accounts receivable, supply chain, right? You know, they got to buy stuff. So that stuff all could be in the cloud, right? From a backup perspective. And he basically went to the president of the university and he ended up buying a bunch of storage from IBM as well as another company, as well as a bunch of servers, mostly from HPE and Cisco, high-end servers. And it worked out to be cheaper, even counting depreciation and managing the servers and the storage than it did if he'd gone to one of the 4 biggest cloud vendors in the world. And he ran the numbers. And if anything, it's gotten worse than back.
I feel as though, Eric, there was a period where there was a race to the bottom. And it feels like it was kind of between, I don't know, 2015 to 2022 kind of. You know, Amazon kind of came into the enterprise, sucking the oxygen out of every sales conversation with, you know, ridiculously low cost Google Cloud, Azure, you know, evolving the operating system. Customers rushed to that just because of the total cost of ownership was so compellingly reduced. But then to your point, this kind of race to the bottom resulted in infrastructure being so commoditized, it was no longer a competitive advantage. It was like, it was very clear to me when Deutsche Bank and when flash storage came out, you were on the wave of that. I was there. They were competitive differentiators for algorithmic trading, for client-facing applications. It was quicker, faster, more reliable with regulation, storage protection, RAID, all of the configuration within the arrays actually gave regulatory protection to data. So we were kind of in this, like, a very exciting growth phase where customers and organizations just realized performance, availability, those kind of metrics were competitive differentiators for their brands. Public cloud came along and disrupted that whole idea. And the whole idea turned into, how can we just do this? I can reduce my operational team. I can get rid of the admin guys. I can move to this panacea of black box infrastructure provision, float my applications on it, happy days. I think that took a lot of innovation out of those companies. And I think that the IT department, the CIO, no longer became the acorn that would grow into oak trees of innovation and differentiation. Now, AI's come along, and for me, it's very clear that organizations who can leverage AI, not only, you know, in marketing, content generation and front end, like kind of a skinning of product and organizational marketing, but where they can use it to create operational efficiency in infrastructure and improve service levels and create some layer of differentiation there to harness AI in business workflow optimization, this sort of things. It feels like I don't think we're there, but we're transitioning back into, hang on, my data, my systems, the processes, they are differentiation again. I feel as though we're moving from a race to the bottom back to a race to the top. As you look at NVIDIA starting to compete with Google moving into the quantum chip space, it's getting exciting again. I mean, I don't know what you think, but
No.
that's kind of...
AI is revolutionizing business, not just IT. The thing you got to be careful with AI is AI doesn't understand everything. AI can often have inherent biases, okay? All payments need to be made net 30. And we know, both of us having worked at IBM never pays net 30. They just don't. And by the way, neither does General Motors, and neither does Deutsche Bank, and neither does Toyota. But you wouldn't know that because AI would say, oh yeah, everyone should be paying their bills in net 30. So that flexibility that people give to the large global enterprises, that's one example. Dual and triple sourcing on the supply chain.
Can I just ask you, just to go through what net 30 is, and people who might be listening may not understand exactly.
So net 30 is the amount of days after you've received an invoice you're supposed to pay within 30 days. That's sort of the industry standard, the ideal. The issue is that 2,000, 3,000 largest companies in the world never do that. They'll pay in 45 days. You and I were both at IBM. IBM's policy was, we'll pay in 60 days. We're IBM. We're a $100 billion US company, one of the biggest in the world. We'll pay in 60 days. By the way, we're going to pay you. We're IBM, right? So we're certainly not going to take advantage of you, but we are only going to pay you in 60 days. And companies on this planet, that is what they do, whether it's to another big vendor, right? Big vendor to big vendor, or doing it to a small vendor. So AI can't always understand the vicissitudes of that. AI can't always understand things like triple sourcing for supply chain for parts that a car manufacturer would need or someone building something would need. The other thing AI definitely cannot do is does not track things like copyright, patents, all that kind of stuff. So in the engineering side and also in the marketing side, if you use it wrong, you're violating patents, you're violating IP, you're using trademarks and other things that have been approved by governments all over the world that it's the property of Ian Smith or Infinidat or HP, and you're violating them right and left. It does hold you open to legal issues. Now, what smart companies do is they have an AI committee. This is not a technical committee. This is one to make sure that AI is being used properly, not doing things wrong. I do think AI is a great tool, but I do think even in marketing, right? I've been doing this for 40 years. I can tell you, someone sent me a chat GPT on me, Eric Herzog, and as you know, I'm all over LinkedIn and all over Twitter. I can't call it X. I'm all over everything. And guess what? 2/3 of it was wrong. Now, there's probably a lot of Eric Herzogs, but compare the number of Eric Herzogs compared to the number
There's only one Eric Herzog. There's only one.
Compared to the number of Ian Smiths or, Joe Davis, right there. So it got it wrong, and there's way less Eric Herzogs in the world than some of these other names. So there are things that AI is an incredible tool if used properly. Not used properly, it exposes you on IP stuff, patent stuff, legal stuff, and making wrong decisions. So you get the AI to bring it in, you still need a human to look at it. Okay, you still need a human with experience to look at it. Now, does that mean that the marketing department that you had 25 guys doing a certain thing in marketing can go to 10 or 15? Probably. Okay, that's probably true. But taking it to nothing and letting the AI run everything, that's a mistake. And it's clearly an issue in the finance side, in anything legal. In fact, there was a case in the United States where a professor at a law school used AI and it cited wrong things. And as you know, U.S. law is based on the UK law, which is based on what are called precedents, which are cases that come before you. Now, sometimes the world changes, right? The law changes, and now what was legal is illegal, or vice versa, okay? But both UK law and US law, Canadian law, Australian law are based on a system of what's called legal precedent, okay? This professor ended up losing his job because he used AI and it came out with a false thing. He published it as a paper in an academic, legal academic thing. It got out that it was wrong, and he said, well, I used AI to do it. Okay, so the other thing is AI can, I hate to say this, but if AI is used improperly, we'll have a generation of stupid people. Okay? If humans don't learn how to think and let someone else do the thinking for you, that's a mistake. So AI is a tool to help you learn things, not the tool to replace people learning it. And there's been a lot of controversy in the States, and I think in some other countries too, particularly where students have been caught using AI to create a paper instead of writing it themselves. Okay, that's
well, I think the interesting point you've made, if you use AI to write a paper, you can't actually validate the content yourself as the quote unquote author. So you would publish something that you don't even know is incorrect or
right.
a litigation risk because it's stolen data or stolen information, maybe even stolen from a place that isn't a trusted source. So you could actually be delivering misinformation accidentally because you're unable to validate or kind of fact check the content it's produced.
Yes. Well, and
so if you're a professor writing something and you have all of the factual content and you want it to skim over the grammar or maybe change it to a different language or maybe change the tone to be slightly more exciting or questioning, where you're using almost like a language manipulator, Gen AI could be good. But if you're getting it to produce just raw content that you believe you're taking as true, suggests a significant risk.
well, and that's why a lot of these big enterprises have AI committees. We're going to use it for this, and this. How are we going to do it? We want you back in 2 months to tell us how it's going, and be honest, right? If you're using it for something like in the finance area and you're publicly traded, which the bulk of the largest 2,000, I mean, there's a few private companies in the largest 2,000 in the world, the largest 3,000 in the world, but the bulk are public. You make a mistake, your stock goes in the toilet, right? Or someone ends up being fined by multiple governments, since most of these big companies are not just American, they're not just European, they're not just Asian, they're global, right? So they're subject to rules and regulations across the entire planet. So that's why, if used properly as a tool, okay, now is AI smarter than a hammer or a screwdriver? Absolutely. But it's the right tool for the right job, okay? If you think about it, think of all the different types of saws there are. There's table saws. Well, I don't think you can cut down a tree with a table saw, okay? And if you're trying to build a bench, would you use a chainsaw? No, chainsaws are for trimming trees or cutting trees, right? And then you've got the saws that are designed to cut concrete, right? Those diamond drill things. If they're trying to fix, the piping underneath the street, right? Or put electrical underneath your street. Well, if you try those other saws that are not a diamond saw, guess what? You can't cut through the concrete or you can't cut through the asphalt. Can't get to it. So it's the right tool for the right job, and AI is a valuable tool.
Remember, Eric, you're sitting on 40 years of deep domain expertise. You've probably worked with some of the smartest, capable people in the industry. You have sponged and absorbed. You've battle hardened. You've been through tough customer. You've got the 40 years of experience for you to be able to do what you do. People coming in the industry, AI is a very seductive tool to shortcut that experience. Because I could take all of your work, put it through an AI, and start generating copycat work, and I have no idea about storage. They don't know that in 1998 you were in Ford Motor Company building storage. So this idea that you're shortcutting, but what you're creating is quite a hollow. Do you think AI will allow people to shortcut professional roles, or how will that play out?
So I think the value of AI is allows someone who knows what they're doing can do the job of 2 to 3 people because AI can help them. Thinking they don't need that person to do the job of those 2 to 3 people
is a mistake.
It's a mistake. Okay. And some people think that AI can just replace everything. And of course, when you do that, that's where there's going to be the mistake. That's where it's going to be messed up. I've learned in life there's no easy way. My father died when I was 5 years old in a car wreck. I had to work while I was going to school starting at 13. I worked through college, what you guys in the UK call university. I put myself through graduate school. I paid for all that on my own. And my degree is not in high tech like yours is. I have a master's degree in Chinese history. And I can tell you, I get in front of most CIOs or most storage guys until you go to the deepest storage stuff. Okay, then I need someone. But until you go to the deepest stuff, I mean, how many people, you know what TPI and BPI is, but how many people, even in storage today, even know what that means, right? or cache queuing. They don't. Well, guess what? And very technical engineers do, but most marketing and salespeople, unless they're in the hard drive space where those terms really matter, probably don't even understand it, even though they've done storage. So AI is the tool that allows someone to do more work. Taking the easy way out, I've learned in life, is not the right way, and it never works in the long run. And it's not just because AI wasn't there. It's because people who work hard usually are successful. Larry Ellison's the perfect example. He worked his rear end off, okay? And even some people that are kind of weirdos usually got there, if they're wildly successful and they're billionaires, because they worked at it. Every once in a while, they inherit it from mommy and daddy, okay? All right, that's a different story. They may be rich, but they didn't deserve it, or they didn't earn it. They might have deserved it because they were born to rich parents and they are their kids. Okay, so they deserve that money, but they didn't earn it. And I believe that the way the world works, whether you're a billionaire or whether you're just doing a good job and you're providing for your family, hard work almost always pays off. And when you try to cut the corners, that's when it bites you in the rear end. So AI is the right tool to get someone who's very good to be able to do the job of two people. What I actually used to call, and there are people who can do that. I know some people who've worked for me before. I used to call it the superstar factor. They can do the job of two people. So you hire them in a startup, because startups often are worried about money for headcount, and they can do the job of two people. And if you're smart in a startup, you give them the stock of two people, but you don't have to pay them for two. And they do the job of two, and they do it well. That's the other thing. So the superstar factor, I don't care whether you're talking English football, rugby, American football, baseball, tennis. If you're a superstar, you don't make a lot of mistakes and you win, right? You have the trophies, you get the money. And by the way, anyone who thinks that professional athletes don't work hard has never been an athlete. And I used to be an Olympic class wrestler, was an all-star baseball player in high school. And trust me, you don't get that just by walking out. Even people with natural talent, the best of the best, right? Many start with natural talent, but to be the best of the best and always make the big money like athletes do, or win a lot of trophies like athletes do, they still have to practice and work at it. They can't just walk out there after not playing, UK football, what we call soccer. If they haven't played it in a year, they might still do well, but are they going to be the all-star player they were? No, they all practice. All the best athletes, they're also the ones that are constantly looking at their own game films, right? They're the ones that always want to get better. So AI is the right tool to help
And
you.
AI could be a tool.
Right.
AI could be a tool that helps analyze games, that helps shape teams based on performance, because essentially it's data processing and predictive analytics. But I think what you're saying is that none of that data processing or predictive analytics is going to make up for the shortfall in hard work, work ethic, and discipline.
Well, and you got to remember that in certain sports, particularly team sports, and I would argue business is the ultimate team sport. You have to have leadership, and AI isn't leadership, unless we end up with Skynet or Vicky. References to, of course, bad AI in science fiction. So unless you got that, you still need leadership. And leadership is not about just using an AI tool. Leadership is a personal thing. You're going to laugh, but I'm so old that while I don't mind Zoom or whatever, I'm the old kind of guy. I like to go shake my customer's hand. I like to take them to dinner. It doesn't mean a lot of times it's more effective to do a Zoom or a WebEx or a Teams meeting. Absolutely. Because you can't get everywhere all the time, and it does help communication. But there are times you need to be there, and you need to, as we used to say, press the flesh, shake their hand, look them in the eye, and you can't really do that on Zoom. You're not really looking them in the eye, and you could tell a lot. Now, some people don't have those capabilities of how to socialize well. They actually love Zoom because they get afraid when they see people face to face. Well, you know what? You can overcome that. I know you won't believe this, because you've known me now for 15 years, but I'm telling you, when I was in high school, I was shy. So I learned how to be the way I am now. And AI didn't teach me. It was watching other people do their thing. So I think AI is an incredibly valuable tool.
I want to come to that. This idea, I remember being in an audience of 5,000 watching you with the money coat on, and you had 5,000 people in the palm of your hand. Do you know what I mean? Everybody was watching you, feeding from your energy. I mean, I love taking the kids to watch soccer because of the crowd, the energy of the crowd. Went to Barcelona and feel the energy. It's amazing. There's a generation that I think if you ask them to get up in front of 5,000 people and present in an exciting and inspiring way, they would. I mean, it's a very nerve-wracking thing to do. AI ain't going to help you in that. So how do you get those skills? What would you be advising? So, people coming into the industry, people come out of academics into the vocation. Where would you be telling them to focus their learning? Because anybody can pick up ChatGPT and query it and get a response, but it's not going to actually give you the physical capability, stand up in front of an audience of 5,000 people and be authentic and compelling and exciting and engaging, which plays to a conversation I was having yesterday about education. And I had this theory that, well, hang on, why does anybody need to go to university if everything is available through a GPT interface? And somebody correctly pointed out, well, what about the professor who is deeply experienced, is exciting to watch, who will trigger emotion within the student that makes them want to learn? And I completely, in my recent obsession with AI and get really deep into this technology and its applications, education seems to be this amazing opportunity for it. But then if you think that people teach people, people learn from people, that lack of human connection, I think probably would mean nobody would learn anything, Can you see the parallels?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that, right? All of us had our favorite teacher, our favorite professor, and by the way, our favorite mentor. I had mentors. When you and I were at IBM, I had 15 mentees. And as you remember, IBM had that official mentor program. So, they would ask the VPs, right? Could you do a couple? I did. So when I was leaving, I happened to have lunch with one of the HR VPs right before I left to come to Infinidat. And she was talking about, she happened to be one of the people who did the mentor program in the US anyway. And I said, how the heck did I end up with 15? And she goes, over 10 of them personally requested that you be their mentor. So you've got to find the right person who knows what they're doing. It's all about, the Chinese have a term for it, it's called guanxi, relationships. So AI can help you to a point, but then you have to leverage relationships. And that concept exists in a lot of Asian cultures. It's supposed to exist in almost all cultures. But again, you're right. There could be a whole generation of people that can't get up in front of an audience of 5,000. And that is a shame. It is not just a thing that entertainers do. You learn when you go to a trade show and you're watching these sessions. And when the guy's up there or the woman's up there and they're boring, do you really suck it into your head? No, but when they are up there pontificating in the right way and waving their arms and doing backflips when they're talking about something that's got nothing to do with being a gymnast, you get pretty fired up. And it also allows you to learn more. There's all kinds of theories about how people learn. So for example, taking notes helps you learn. And they've also proven that taking notes on a computer, which a lot of college students do now, is not as effective as actually handwriting those notes. They also have talked about that while you can put up PowerPoints, if you have too many videos and songs and other stuff in the PowerPoint, they focus on the video, they focus on the song, and they don't focus on what you're trying to get across, right? So there's nothing bad about having a sizzly PowerPoint, but that doesn't replace the ability of speaking, and it doesn't replace the ability to emphasize what's important. And AI doesn't tend to do that. That's part of the problem. So that's why, again, whether it's marketing, whether it's sales, whether it's a lot of functions, the use of AI could take one person able to do 2, maybe 3 people's jobs, but they can't do 50. And thinking AI is going to even get rid of that one person is crazy, because you need to make sure that AI is not violating laws, that AI is actually giving you the right data, right? That professor got wrong data. By the way, he lost his job, so he's unemployed. And if you think any other reputable law school is going to hire that guy because he basically got caught cheating,
it's done.
Again, he was using AI. So AI is, I hate to say it, but it's the cheater's tool. You still have to learn things. You still have to understand how to market, how to sell, how to engineer. And thinking that AI is going to do it all for you is a mistake. And it turns into a society where you can't make decisions, where you follow blindly. The next thing you know, I'll be emperor of the world. Forget all these politicians now. I'll replace them all. I'll be emperor of the world because AI is going to make me emperor of the world. And everyone's going to blindly follow me because they can't distinguish good from bad, right? And AI can help you, but it can gather bad information like what happened to that professor. And that's why these big enterprises have these oversight committees. So you need to make sure, you also got to make sure you deploy it properly, right? There is a methodology to deploying AI, particularly for enterprises. I'm a global enterprise. I've got 12 divisions. I'm trying to do AI on my finances. You better make sure you're going into all 12 of those divisions and getting the right financial data. Otherwise, even though it's your own data and you think it's right because it's your data, it's not from outside, it's your data. If you don't get all the data sources, you just made a possibly uninformed decision or a bad decision because 9 divisions do it one way and they're all big. So it's a global Fortune 500. So they're all billions of US dollars. And there's 3 others that also are billions of you, but they do it a different way. And if they don't do it the different way, those divisions will fail. And AI can do that, but you better make sure you have all the data sources, they're all coordinated, and you're making sure that you also, remember, AI is like a person. The smart human is always learning. Smart human always learns, even when they're 90 frickin' 5. My plan, of course, is to live to be 120. So you need to make sure you are always learning. Things change. There was no, when my mother was growing up and my father was growing up, there was no rockets going to space. There were no nuclear weapons. There were no computers, okay? Even planes were really used by the military and most people couldn't even fly. Now it's common to fly all over the world. All you got to be is lower middle class type of income. Even sometimes people who don't, there'll be a $99 flight all the way across the US or from the US to Europe. That stuff happens. But the world changes. So AI is constantly learning. People need to constantly learn. So when you're doing something like the supply chain, if you take the data and you don't factor in that company X is on allocation, and that happens after you've run your AI workload, now you don't have the screws to build the cars because they were your number one provider of screws and you didn't get all the screws. So is that a financial impact to the company since you're a car company and you're selling cars to people or trucks? Like, yes. So you need to make sure that AI is always learning and that you gather the data sets. And the bigger the company, the harder it is to make sure you've got all the data sets right? You don't want data in the corner. What if you've got 22 databases and they're valuable, they're good, but the 3 most valuable databases on that topic in the company, you forgot to make sure AI is pulling the data from? I'd say that's a bad decision, whether that be finance, supply chain, HR, marketing, engineering, and a technical company. If you don't have that data, it's a gap. It's just like people who talk about something and never studied it or learned it or read about it even. They saw it once on a TV show and now there's some sort of guru. It's one thing if they got a degree in that topic or they read 47 books on it and watched 47 documentaries. Okay, people can be self-educated. But AI is about learning, right? And it needs to have data sources to learn it. So it's very critical in the enterprise to A, be careful that the data sources are not biased. B, be careful the data sources are not violating patent law and all kinds of other laws that are out there. And also to make sure that you are truly gathering all the data you need to make the right decisions across a large entity, because AI can be incredibly valuable in an enterprise place. But boy, if you're missing certain data sets, you just really could screw the company, like in that example of the screws. If you don't have screws to build the car, then you are going to take a financial hit. If you're Volkswagen, if you're General Motors, if you're Toyota, if you're Hyundai, I don't care what car company you are. If you don't have the screws to put the car together, that's bad. But AI could help you.
What is Infinidat doing? How are Infinidat leveraging AI? What are they bringing to your customers? What's kind of the strategy now? Because what I would say is, Eric, that this year, 2025, I've had I've seen more interest from customers having the big discussions, like how do we re-architect with AI first? How do we ensure we're not making infrastructure decisions where we're going to close a door to a potential AI investment or optimization opportunity? How do we get data back out of the cloud so we can process it into our own custom bespoke AIs. I'm seeing a lot of those conversations, but they always end with what's actually working today, because there's so many people washing their marketing content with AI, generative AI, this sort of thing. I think there's almost 2 points. What's the big vision with Infinidat and it offers to customers? And also, what's actually happening today? What is that first step of that journey?
So we see it two ways. First of all, is leveraging AI and machine learning technology in the systems, in our actual systems, to make them more fault tolerant. We have many customers. Gartner, as you know, does this thing called peer insights, which are not the Gartner analysts. It's literally end users writing reviews. Gartner vets that it's not me or you writing them, that it's truly an end user of the company. But we have 30 or 40 of them saying we've had an InfiniBox or an InfiniGuard for 3 or 4 years, and after the first installation, we never touched the thing. It runs on its own. So that level of automation capability, we leverage AI and ML in our InfiniSafe cyber detection, because, as you know, cyber criminals are not the guys like in an old mafia movie. That's not who they are. They're brilliant people, whether they're college educated or not, who know how to basically, if you will, they're brilliant at stealing things and leveraging computers to do that. Okay, so you need to make sure, right, that you use AI, because the ransomware and the malware is always adopting. So if you will, that's AI in our systems and our solutions. Okay, what do we do to automate? How do we have autonomous automation so that, when we've done our own survey based on customers who allow us to do call home, and some don't, but most do, but a few don't. For the ones that do, 62% of the problems that come up, we actually found and fixed before they ever even know they had them. Now, there are certain physical problems, as you know, having been a storage guy before, like the bad cable. We can identify that, but they will have to go eventually replace the cable, because we are triple redundant on the Infinidat side.
Well, I remember a couple of things. I worked for Hitachi Data System for a period, and the Japanese were always very, reserved. And I was building a storage architecture at Deutsche Bank for this algorithmic trading stuff. And the guy, Julian Marks, came in from Hitachi, and he said 100% availability. And EMC was the incumbent. 100% availability. If there's an outage, we'll write you a check for £1 million. And I can remember that was when £1 million was a lot of money. It still is a lot of money. But, I was just blown away. I still remember that now, 20 years on. But there was a point where there was, I don't know whether it was a full outage, but it was where some solder spat from one failing power supply to the other. And the Japanese came straight in with this piece of steel that kind of physically separated the power supplies to ensure if there was ever a future spit of solder, it would be captured by this metal kind of protection plate. And I love all that, because that was like physical systems. We've lost that. I feel as though I like getting hands on with technology. With all the cloud and that, we've lost all that understanding of how it all hangs together, which I find a bit of a shame. Maybe we'll go back to that. I don't know, but sorry, I interrupted. But you.
AI in the solutions to make the solutions better for the end.
Yeah, so it's like that. There's two motions, I think, isn't there? One of them is native integration of machine learning, just to make this stuff learn, get better, more efficient, and be predictive.
More efficient, identify problems proactively. The second part is actually storage that's optimized for AI workloads and applications. So this involves performance. It involves availability, which of course most enterprise apps do. We offer 100% availability. We guarantee it, and it's on all of our primary storage systems, so you just get it. So 100% availability, because if you're running AI and it's constantly learning, and you're doing your financial, and you somehow automate your accounts payable, you have to pay bills every day if you're Global Fortune 2000. Every day you got to pay bills, right? You got to get it ready, you got to process it, you got to cut the check, you have to make sure you have all the appropriate stuff in your finances, because you legally have to report that, because you're publicly traded, most of them, blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot you got to do. And you have to know that we owe Ian Smith money, because he did a service for us 30 days ago. So you constantly need to learn. So 100% availability interrupts that. And then
What do the training and inferencing workloads look like? I assume training workloads are like huge sequential reads, or are they random reads? And then inferencing feels like it's going to be a lot more fragmented and grand. I mean, the storage days are somewhat behind me, but I used to love getting into the detail of read versus write, sequential versus random. Is that still a thing? Are you modeling AI workloads?
What we're doing is we optimize the performance side, whether it be latency, because if you're doing something like financial transactions or supply chain, those are those are databases, right? And you're trying to use AI to better understand 12 different or 20 different or 30 different databases. So performance is critical there, as well as in certain other workloads. If you were going to use it for parts acquisition, there might be pictures of thousands of parts, well, millions of parts if you're a car manufacturer, millions of parts, right? Leather seat comes in a different color, 12 colors. That's a different part number from the manufacturer, right? Where you get the car from, or sorry, where you get the components from. So in that case, you also need not only the power of the database, but you need the bandwidth, because that you're now also moving images. Okay. The third thing you need to do is you need to make sure that the AI can gather data from a number of sources. So we use the NFS protocol, which allows us to gather data from databases. All the databases have NFS versions, but also file data. And we've set ours up. It's a reference architecture that we can gather data that's not on our storage. If it's on our competitor's storage and it's a bunch of videos or a bunch of audio or a bunch of images that are in NFS, we can pull that with our RAG architecture, right, to automate the retrieval. So what we do is our RAG solution works A, on our storage and others. B, we make sure we have 100% availability at the system level, because if you're doing things like supply chain and finance trying to do AI, you better be able to get the data all the time, 24/7 by 365. We also make sure that we integrate with the RAG, that we integrate with vector databases, right? Because that's what you use. So think of us as very much on the inferencing side, gathering all the data, optimize the performance of the data, then it runs through the vector database, which connects to the LLM or the SLM, right? And the large language model or small language model is what actually is, if you will, thinking. It's doing the thinking like we think. Or a complex product, you got to pull the data in, right? You need the vector database, kind of the way our heads have databases built into them. Then you've got to use that to learn about everything, and then it spews out, of course, the supposed inference. And like I said, when someone did ChatGPT and sent it to me, 2/3 of it was a different Eric Herzog. I work at Microsoft. By the way, I am connected to a guy on LinkedIn who does work at Microsoft, whose name is Eric Herzog, and he spells it the same way that I do. However, he's not almost 70 years old. He's like a 40-year-old guy based on his picture. So
Eric, can I just say, Eric, I speak to people every week about retrieval augmented generation, vector databases, IO optimized for AI. For somebody who's nearly 70, you've just put it in the most consumable, easy to understand, casual way that anybody I've spoke to has done. Whatever it may be about age, you're not losing that ability to take extremely complex subjects and just make them so casually understandable. Well, I don't know whether it's the shirt you're wearing or something. Is it like that frog on, it was like something Toad that just made you learn things as you're speaking. I think that was just so casually well done. I'm very impressed.
Well, thank you. Again, I think the important thing is you talk business technical value, but you got to talk business value. So when you're talking to the CIO, they may understand, they may not. They probably have legions of my AI team, so they know enough, but not enough. And definitely, if you think the CFO is not going to sign off or have to sign off, if you're going to do AI on financial workloads, I guarantee you someone in the finance team is signing off on that. If you're going to do it on supply chain and logistics, the supply chain team is going to do that. If you're going to try to do it for manufacturing, automate manufacturing, which a lot of things are factory automated, but they're not AI automated. If you don't think the VP of manufacturing is going to have to approve that stuff, so you've got to be able to take things that are complex and make them non-complex. When you need to be complex about them, be complex. Again, this is part of something I've just learned. You always play to your audience. And if your audience is super technical, You go, as we would say in the States, geek or nerd. You go geek or nerd, which, by the way, are affectionate terms in the United States for people. And when you're talking to the CFO or the CIO or, the VP of manufacturing or, the VP of marketing, you can't do that. You got to get it up to the level where they understand we are going to do, and here's how we save you $1 million a year, or here's how we save you this, that, or the other thing, right? They don't care about the technology. To them, technology is a tool, of which AI is just a subset tool. Storage is a tool. Servers are tools. So I don't want to hear the garbage. Just tell me what it's going to do to make my company better, to save me money, to make me more money, to make me more efficient. That's what they want to know. And so that's why you got to be able to explain it, as you said earlier, down at the bottom, right? I talk to my 35-year-old son a certain way now, but it's way different from even when he was 20, God forbid when he was 15, and heck, when he was 5. So, and that's how you have to be. And the good communicator, okay, can go up and down the food chain and also up and down the age range.
And it's that EQ that you've got that allows you to position your messaging for the crowd, something that AI content certainly can't do. What's the scoop on the Lenovo acquisition?
So it's not done yet. It was just announced. It's expected to finish in the second half. So until then, we're still Infinidat and we're off doing our own thing. God forbid the deal should fall apart, but we've all seen deals fall apart in the past. Usually it's two big companies merging together, right? Either for regulatory or just they decide it's not the right thing to do. Like what you've seen in the airline space, right? Sometimes the regulators won't allow it, and other times it's like, now that we've kind of been talking, no, you're better off as a separate airline from us. So you've had both of those. With us, that's unlikely, but at the same time, we're operating as an independent company. They're doing their thing and we're doing our thing. And, until the good thing is we fill a gap in their portfolio. They have mid-range and entry storage. They do very well according to the IDC market share numbers in that space, but they have nothing in the high end. So A, it's a gap on the storage side, and B, on the server side, they are entry, mid-range, and high-end. So when they're selling high-end storage or high-end servers, some of their competitors, like Dell, like HPE, can also try to sell the storage. That doesn't mean they always do. We have tons of accounts that use HPE and Dell servers connected to Infinidat, right? But there are also accounts that have Dell servers, Dell storage, HPE servers, HPE storage. So this allows Lenovo long-term to be able to offer a complement to their high-end server business and a complement to their storage business, which right now is very successfully entry and mid-range. But when they need a high-end solution with the features we have, they don't have anything to sell. So it allows them to expand their business. So that's where the stands now, expected to complete in the second half. So until then, we are still Infinidat. I'm still wearing my Hawaiian shirt, and you know me a long time, Ian. So as you know, I've worn them at Infinidat. I wore them at IBM. I wore them at IBM the first time. I wore them at EMC. I wore them at Mac. I'm never changing my Hawaiian shirts when I'm out there presenting to an audience or attending a trade show. It's just what I do.
It's probably written into the acquisition that you need to retain the Hawaiian look for the Lenovo thing. It feels very much like the Dell motion back in the mid-2010s, where they were just so solid with the laptop and that early, and then they were moving into, was it the 3PAR acquisition, where they were getting actually serious about hard, really enterprise-capable infrastructure.
Yeah,
it's very exciting.
With the EMC acquisition, HPE did that by buying 3PAR.
3PARs, yeah.
Yeah, there's HPE did 3PAR, and they did, and Dell. Both of them had good entry and mid-range stuff, but in the high end, they couldn't compete. Now, obviously, the big dog back in the day, because I was there as a senior VP of product management, product marketing, was EMC, right? And it was a $25 billion company at the time. But Dell wanted to have a competitive storage solution, and so that's why they bought it. And, that has worked out well for them. Obviously, they've had some issues lately. The numbers are public, so I'm not saying anything that you can't see from looking at their own PDF of their presentations every quarter, that they're, for several quarters, they've had trouble on their storage business. But overall, Dell is clearly doing well. So from our perspective, it's a deal that's going to happen in the second half. It fills a gap for them on the storage side, and it complements their high-end server business where they haven't had a complement. And a couple of their competitors in the server world do. Dell does, HPE does. So they want to be able to have a complement. It doesn't mean every time they sell a high-end server, they're going to sell what will be Lenovo high-end storage in the future. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Dell and HPE don't sell it every time. But right now they can't even try because they don't have a solution to propose. And they will that. So it helps fill that gap, complementing the high-end server business, and it fills another gap. As you know, they've also been pushing lately AI, right, from their perspective. And with our RAG architecture, again, a lot of the AI stuff tends to be high-end, right? It's not, if you're going to gather data from 57 databases in Global Fortune 500, you're not doing that on entry-level storage, right? So that allows them to complement what they're doing on the AI side as well with our RAG architecture and how we can optimize AI applications and workloads with the Infinidat storage solutions.
As we're coming to a close, there's one question I ask. There's a number of conversations I've had recently where C-level execs are saying to their CIOs, do something with AI, find a productivity gain, find something, do something, without really knowing. It feels like there's a tick in the box that C-levels, without actually understanding where the value is. What advice would you give to people in that motion where they want to get a hold of this generative AI freight train, but they don't want to damage their existing system? Where do you start? What things do you need to think about?
So there's a couple things. First of all, it's all about applications, workloads, and use cases. That's what the world revolves around in the IT world. Storage, servers, and networking are the foundational infrastructure, but it's still about the Oracle thing, the SAP thing, Mongo, Cassandra, some sort of payroll application, some sort of mapping application if they're doing anything in the building world, right? Or they're in the infrastructure services like telcos and power companies, right? They need to understand the geology because they got to lay those power lines or the phone lines, right? So all of those things are application workload and use case driven. So the IT guys need to understand, who can I partner with on the application side, whether it's in finance, supply chain, HR, what can I do? You can always do some AI in your infrastructure. We just talked about the things that we offer at Infinidat, right? So what we do with the cyber thing, and maybe that's enough to check the box. But AI is just a way to optimize applications, workloads, and use cases. And so you need to understand, what are the needs of the business owners in those functions? What are they having problems with? And then, of course, you need to make sure that you're doing it effectively and clearly legally. You don't want these big Fortune 2000, Fortune 3000 companies. Last thing you want is violating patents, IP, and have 1,200 lawsuits because your AI was, gathering data from them. And by the way, remember, if you do AI improperly on the enterprise side, you just exposed your own IT and made it public if you don't do it right. So you've got to be careful in how you do it so you don't have a legal exposure, stealing stuff, even though you didn't mean to, but still you are legally liable because you stole it, okay? Or having your own IP of whatever that may be exposed. If you're in the financial sector, maybe you've got some sort of whiz-bang thing on trading, or maybe you've got some whiz-bang thing on optimizing mortgages globally, on how to make mortgages more cost-effective for, lower income people. And if that's done with proprietary information, if you do the AI wrong, you just told all the other mortgage companies how to optimize their mortgages for low-income people and still get paid, but still help those people buy homes. And if that's proprietary to you, you just expose it. So you have to make sure you're exposing your stuff so that now it's free for the whole world to steal. Or B, you're stealing stuff inadvertently. And then find the right application workload and use case. I would also say you should start with a pilot. Okay? Don't just run around and do it. And again, especially in these big top 2,000, 3,000 companies, you need to make sure you understand where all the data is sitting. Okay, if you're going to do something on supply chain, and I think the car manufacturers are great because the car manufacturers often have various divisions, right? Toyota has Lexus. And yes, some of the Lexuses are based on Toyotas, but they're not all the same. So if you don't pull all the database information from Lexus and Toyota, and you're trying to use AI to buy stuff, there's going to be things that you'll have for your Toyotas. You'll have part of the things for your Lexuses where they use the same frame or the same engine, but there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff that's only available on Lexus, and you won't buy it because you didn't do it right. So you need to make sure in big companies, multi-divisional companies, or hugely global companies where this data could be dispersed, right? The expert, that data all sits in India for whatever reason. All the finance guys are in India. And this one, they're sitting in Mexico. And this one, they're sitting in the US. Or they're sitting in all three of those countries. You better make sure you're grabbing it all. Otherwise, the AI, again, as we talked about earlier, you don't have all the data. So you're making just the way a human makes mistakes if they don't have all the data, now the AI would make a mistake. So that's the things you need to do to get started with AI inside of your enterprise.
I just spending some time with you today and Rodney last week. So I've spent some time with a Texan and a Californian. That energized optimism that is in the people I used to work with in North America. I'm so much enjoying these last two conversations, Eric. For you to be as energized and as passionate and as grounded in facts as you always have been is a pleasure. So as we bring it to a close, you're so real. And I get that sense of depth of knowledge, which you don't get with somebody who's generated something from AI. And your exposure to thousands of CIOs, you're working across the entire enterprise gamut of infrastructure, your understanding of the big trends, little trends, this ability for you to synthesize a whole load of complex data into an understandable format and present it at different levels. It's amazing. When I try and kind of sum it up just in like the last hour, your skills are unbelievable, really. I can see why you're the best CMO on the planet. It's certainly in infrastructure. Easily. Been a constant source of inspiration and learning to me for the last 20 years, and I've truly enjoyed that. I would love to get one of these face-to-face because I know that the energy... Do you know something, Eric? We talk about energy in face-to-face. I've felt energy on this call too. So I know we've gone back on the whole Zoom, face-to-face, press the flesh. As much as I'd love to press a bit of the Herzog flesh, this has been extremely inspiring too. And I've felt that energy come through this system. But, the question is, AI, do you think it's going to lead us to a utopia or a dystopia?
I'm on the fence. Okay. This sounds crazy. What is this? This is the Star Trek communicator. This is a Star Trek communicator. Okay? You think it was impossible, right? Same thing with supersonic flight. Same thing with going to a moon, right? There's some old 1980s movie about H.G. Wells going, right, based on his book, and it happened. So the issue with AI is its combination with quantum computing. Quantum compute, will it ever be really like Skynet in the Terminator? Probably not. But will it try to make some decisions? Because it can be so much faster on a quantum computer than any human can think? Yes. And so if you don't have the right oversight of AI, it will be dystopia. If you have the right, it will be ideal, right? Helping solve cancer, helping people who have learning disabilities or other disabilities, helping companies be more efficient and make more money, okay? It can all be done. But if you don't do it right and you don't do it carefully, we will lose our humanness. And when I'm 120, I am planning on driving my own car. Okay, I'm not going to drive the Johnny cab like in Schwarzenegger's movie Men in Mars. I'm not doing that. I'm driving. Okay, will I be careful? Yes. And as you know, the early days of auto driving has resulted in several deaths because it isn't there yet. That doesn't mean it won't be there when I'm 110, but thinking it's there today, it's risky. Using AI appropriately can make everything more efficient. It can free people up for their time. It can be an educational tool. It can clearly be a tool to help with a lot of issues, whether that be crime, whether that be healthcare, whether that be solving, all kinds of disease issues or helping solve, in certain countries, as you know, they have drought issues. Well, maybe AI can help solve the drought issue or figure out here, if we do it this way, even though they're in a drought, they'll still have enough water for that country, right? Or food supplies. There's a million things, but it needs to be used carefully. And again, people need to be careful. Everybody's got their own data. Every company is entitled to that data, and stealing that data is wrong. It is just wrong. So I think AI, that's why I'm on the fence. If everyone steals everyone else's stuff, that's heading towards a dystopia, right? If quantum computing does stuff and the next thing you know, it decides it should be firing nuclear weapons, not to kill human beings because it thinks there's a threat over in some other country, whereas a human would say, there's a threat, but there's no need to fire a nuke now. But quantum computing will think way faster than any human. So we're always going to need that combination of quantum computing with AI, definitely going to need human oversight, if you will, the human overlord, to make sure it does the right thing and doesn't do crazy stuff. So I'm on the fence. I think if done right and people think about what they're doing and how to use it right, it can be incredibly valuable. If they do it wrong, even if it doesn't end like something in science fiction, there'll be lawsuits all over the place. Everyone will be in court all the time. companies will go bankrupt because they used it wrong and didn't get the screws they needed to build their product. So I think that's why it's in the early days. And in any early day thing, it's not a panacea. It's the right tool for the right jobs, deployed properly and leveraged properly and legally to protect everyone's rights as individuals, and also all the companies. They've got rights. If Apple developed the iPhone, if somehow they used AI and people could steal an iPhone and make their own, that's wrong. Apple's paid billions and billions to design that stuff. Same with Google, same thing with what a lot of companies do. So that level of protecting their investment is critical. And AI, if done right, will do well with that. If done wrong, everyone will be in court all day long suing every company, will be suing everyone for stealing things. And that's not right. And it's completely unproductive. AI needs to be done right, and then it will be more utopian. If it's done wrong, it will be dystopia. And right now I'd say it's on the fence because you see things in the paper all the time. Like that professor I mentioned lost his job because he used AI and he used it wrong and he lost his job over that. Imagine that was a big company ordering piece parts for whatever they're building. And the next thing you know, they can't build anything and they go out of business because AI wasn't deployed properly and done right. And then they can't get their supply. And next thing you know, they're out of business for not being able to build what people expect to get from that company. So that's the dystopia side of it.